This is called Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Hello, this is Grace.
And we are at our third segment today with our ABC dialogue. Earlier on, we had a discussion on TPPA. Actually, more like you both.
Yeah.
But now we have the head of delegation for European Union. Of course, we have His Excellency Luc Vandebon. Hi.
Hello.
Hi everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
So from TPPA, we are focusing more on European Union and ASEAN and the relationship in between both regional organizations. So maybe a bit of background about who you are and your work as the EU head of delegation here.
So my name is Luc Vandebon. I'm Belgian. I'm a Belgian citizen, but I've been working for the last 30 years. Next year, the 1st of March, is my 30th anniversary for the European institutions.
Don't worry, you don't look a year older.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I started very young. I started right after kindergarten.
Oh.
I've been a considerable part of these 30 years. I've been working in Asia in our external relations department. This is my 5th posting in Asia. I spent 6 years in Beijing, 5 years in Korea, 5 years in the Philippines, 3 years in Kabul, Afghanistan, before I came here 2 years ago.
So this is your second Southeast Asian country, because you mentioned just now the Philippines.
Yeah.
So is Malaysia any different from the Philippines or the rest of the countries that you've been with?
Well, they're all very different. They're all very individual, and that's one of the reasons why that keeps me going, keeps me very interested in going to these other countries. If they would all be the same or similar to Belgium, I would have stayed home probably.
And eat Belgian chocolates.
Yeah. Which would have been very bad for my health by now. So, yes, they're all different. They're all different. They're all very Asian, but very Asian in their individual characteristics, which is fascinating.
So Southeast
Absolutely
Asia consists of 10 countries, different from probably South Asia and also East Asia. So when you were posted here, did you notice any, as an outsider, any significant uniqueness or differences regarding on ASEAN or Southeast Asia as a whole?
Well, we're very interested working for the European Union in an organization like ASEAN and in what is going on in terms of integration efforts in ASEAN. Our two regions, the EU, Europe and Asia, and ASEAN, have been interlinked and intertwined for decades. And there have always been huge masses of people from both regions traveling to the other one, be it for academic reasons or cultural exchanges or education purposes or business or just simply as tourists. So with the creation of the European Union and ASEAN, it was quite logical that we were very much interested in each other as potential future partners. And that is also why in 1972 already the European Union, European Community, and as it was called at the time, established official contacts with ASEAN. We were actually the first ones to do so in 72, and that was formalized by our very first EU-ASEAN ministerial in 1977, 5 years later.
Oh, that's quite some time ago.
So this basically results in the fact that we have now had 40 years of a very intense, good partnership with ASEAN, and a partnership that is ever growing, as can be seen from the many high-level visits that have been taking place the last couple of years.
Since the 70s until now, is there any kind of evolution or any kind of development in terms of how the focus of EU has been towards ASEAN? Like in the 70s, probably it would be more towards diplomatic relations, I suppose. But now, has it grown from there?
It's a full partnership. Trade and investment are very important. Actually, we are. ASEAN is our third largest trading partner after the United States and China. We have about 235 billion of bilateral trade in goods and in services. In 2000, I think those were the figures for 2013. And we're also ASEAN's largest investment partner. We're providing about 22% of all FDI to ASEAN, which makes us the single largest provider of FDI.
To ASEAN as
to
the,
ASEAN.
the organization or
No,
individual
to the
countries?
individual to ASEAN and its member states as a whole. And the EU is ASEAN's third largest trading partner after China and Japan. And this accounts for roughly 10% of ASEAN's extra regional trade. So, but we're not only about trade, as you rightfully put. There's much more. We also have we have developed a very intense political relationship, and we're also talking about a whole range of other socio-cultural aspects of our relationship.
Especially ASEAN is moving towards ASEAN Economic Community or ASEAN Community in general, similar to the European Union Community. Would it be similar in a sense?
Well, I think that the integration process might be similar, but what you ultimately would like to see happen might be different from what we had in mind or what we have accomplished. This is actually another aspect of our close relationship, is that we share this vision of creating single markets. You call it the ASEAN Economic Community, and we have the single market. And we're very interested in that, obviously, and we're always saying that despite the fact that there is a little bit of suspicion in the region, because people wonder, what is the EU, why are they here, why are they interested, are they going to impose their European model on us and all of that? Well, far from that. We definitely do not want to work with models and templates. The idea is...
it's not the Belgium chocolate that you're trying to impose for us.
No,
it's
the more
the
the
ASEAN
better,
chocolate.
obviously, when it comes down to chocolate.
Coming from a region that has already has that integration thing going on, and now with ASEAN heading towards that direction as well, is there anything that you're looking forward to see happening?
Well, we are the two single largest regional integration projects and undertakings in the world. So what we want ASEAN to succeed, because we obviously feel, this is not purely based on the fact that we are out there for the good of everybody in the world. There's a lot of self-interest involved as well.
Okay.
But we feel that if we have a strong ASEAN partner in terms of economics and political relations, political and security-wise in the region, economic trade and investment in terms of the fact that we know our businesses in Europe know that they have to go beyond Europe and look at other markets, and Southeast Asia is one of the growth areas in the world. So we're very much interested in this succeeding, and that is why we have reached out to the governments of ASEAN. I do that here in Malaysia. My colleagues, we have nine delegations, 9 offices in the 10 member states. The only country where we don't have a physical office is Brunei, that is handled by Jakarta. But we everywhere, my colleagues and I go out and offer our experience, to share our experience with our counterparts in the government, because we feel that you can definitely learn as much from our mistakes these days as from our accomplishments, and we are an open book.
But despite European Union can be considered one of those very successful regional integration, why ASEAN make a distinction not to be like European Union? It has been spoken by many ASEAN leaders. We are not EU, but we aspire to be a single market with a community, a regional community.
Well, it's difficult for me to comment on why individual ASEAN member state leaders would say that or mean that, but obviously that's their good right, and you have to develop on according to the path that you have set out for yourself to do so. We have chosen a certain direction which has worked for us in most cases, although we have terribly huge problems explaining to our citizens the benefits of that have been brought to them through regional integration. But ASEAN can do this in a very different way. That's up to them. The only thing that we're interested in, because you're such an important partner for us in very many aspects, economic, political, socio-cultural, is for us to see it succeed, to see it work. And that's why we are genuinely interested in helping you as much as we can, and whenever we are asked to do so. Again, as I said, we don't want to impose any models or any lines to take or whatever, or paths to follow. It's up to you. But we just hope that ASEAN can, make a little bit of time to look at how we did it,
Definitely.
and then benefit from, as I said, these days probably more the mistakes we made than from the accomplishments.
Actually, it's actually a very good example that how EU has established so far. And for us, ASEAN, we have different challenges, different difficulties that we have been facing, and the approaches we have made is also different from how EU has been overcome the challenges. So not only we are covering all those political, economic, and social culture side, we also cover the academic exchanges, and also we also have environmental protection and then different climate changes that we are facing within ASEAN regions.
Yeah, and I mean, go back to that question, right? If ASEAN wants to be its own self and not to follow the path of European Union, but at the same time, ASEAN is always seen as the weaker ones in terms of regional integration. It hasn't really proved itself being this strong regional grouping where people, other countries can actually either aspire to be or just, can't help but to admire it. So if one thing that ASEAN can learn from EU, what is one aspect that you think EU is the best example of regional integration?
Thank you for putting it that way. I didn't say that you said. I strongly believe that one of the main reasons why we were able to come to where we are now is the fact that from in the beginning we invested effort, money, time, all the member states in setting up solid structures, solid institutions that work within the mandates that we get from the heads of state and the heads of government of our member states, but that are there to provide the backbone of the integration. ASEAN is more relying on meetings of the heads of state and
so it relies on the personality, on the current foreign policy of the head of states.
We think that because of the creation of solid institutions, there is more a continuity on what you start to do than if you let it rely exclusively on individual heads of state, that once they are replaced by other heads of states or heads of government, the policy of that country or the idea they might have about regional integration might differ, and you might start veering off on a different track. I think the fact that we were able to integrate as much as we have until this point, it's not finished, it's never finished, is largely due to the fact that we were able to set up. When I say we, that means the member states making up the EU with their full support, and it's actually their decision, these institutions, like you have the European Commission, the European Court of Justice, the European Council, the European Parliament, which is now directly elected, which all play a vital role in pursuing this integration idea. So that is also, as I just said, we want ASEAN to succeed. We look at what worked with us, and we are big providers of support to ASEAN, not only the individual Southeast Asian countries, but ASEAN as an organization. We've actually doubled, nearly tripled our financial contribution to ASEAN, from 70 million to 170 million only last year, with the idea to provide support for the structure as such, because we want this to succeed.
Glad that a lot of development has been happening in terms of ASEAN, especially European is one of the biggest supporter of ASEAN, and also if you are talking about trade, it is, you mentioned earlier, it is the third largest trade partner for ASEAN. in Southeast Asia currently, a lot of talks have been happening in terms of regional, not just regional, but somehow a global trade pact like the TPPA and the RCEP. But since EU seems to be having a significant portion of its trade with ASEAN, has there been any talks going around to have an EU-ASEAN FTAs?
Yes, I mean we're very much in favor of trade liberalization and creating opportunities for the businesses and economic operators in both regions, or between us and our partners. We are multilateralists, the EU. You know, we highly value the central role played internationally by the UN and all their affiliations. That is also why, in terms of trade, at the time, you know, we wanted to see an accomplishment, reaching a deal on the DDA, on the Doha Development Agenda. When that didn't work, I remember at the time when I was in the Philippines, our trade commissioner was Pascal Lamy, who afterwards became Director General of the WTO. And he always told us, we do not want to participate in this spaghetti bowl of bilateral trade relations, bilateral FTAs, because ultimately they all have to be WTO compliant, which means that you invest a lot of effort, you duplicate and triplicate whatever efforts and money to basically arrive at something that is similar with most of these FTAs. So that is why in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, when I was in the Philippines, we started talking to ASEAN as a region, and we had in mind that, you know, we wanted a region-to-region deal rather than a EU individual bilateral FTA deal. Regretfully, most of our big partners didn't feel the same and started happily concluding and negotiating FTAs.
But would EU lose out on the trade in ASEAN, since the future of trade seems to be focusing more on the mega trade pact?
Well, we started losing out at the time because we didn't want to come from the high fence that we set for ourselves, and we wanted to pursue this region-to-region deal, which for us still is now the ultimate prize. So we got off the fence and started negotiating with Singapore, when I only look at Southeast Asia, with Singapore, and we currently are also negotiating with Vietnam, Thailand and Malaysia on an FTA. With Singapore in September last year, we got the deal, the FTA, and with the other three countries we're negotiating. If accomplished, if we have an FTA, these bilateral FTAs should be seen as stepping stones, building blocks towards what we still consider the ultimate prize, which is a region-to-region FTA. And for that, you know, this is an idea that we haven't shelved forever. For political reasons, in the mid-2000s, we were also not able to do so because with some of the member states of ASEAN were a little bit difficult in terms of political relations, and we couldn't always have the negotiations taking place because some of these people were not allowed in Europe, plain simply, which makes it very difficult to negotiate. But we are very much looking forward to the accomplishment of the ASEAN Economic Community, to a more practical solidification, solidifying of your single market. And then I think we will most likely look again into picking up where we left it in the mid-2000s and continue pursuing a region-to-region FTA.
In fact, the EU has launched a program to enhance the ASEAN FTA's negotiations, the capacity itself.
Correct.
Then how about the removing the trade barriers between EU and ASEAN? Could you elaborate on that?
Well, that is basically one of the main reasons of an FTA.
Sure.
We want to make it, you know, when I look at Malaysia alone, but I think the same goes for the rest of the wider region. Our business, our economic operators are happy in Malaysia. We have more than 2,000 companies, more than 2,000 European Union companies that operate in Malaysia. And when I speak to the ambassadors of the member states and to the heads of the bilateral chambers of commerce, they all tell me that their businesses are happy. They're happy to be here. At the same time, they ask us to pursue an FTA because an FTA is kind of an insurance policy, more a long-term guarantee that investment cooperation will be based on a mutual agreement, some kind of a contract that can only solidify the relations and continue to further break down barriers to trade. So we pursue that on very many issues, and when you look at the agendas for the FTAs that we have with everybody, they're all about breaking down trade barriers and providing better access to each other's market. So that is taking into account obviously also the desires and the aspirations of our partners. But having said that, we started with an FTA. We got the mandate from Malaysia, from Prime Minister Najib, and we from President Barroso from the Commission in October 2010, and we got a 2-year mandate. They hoped that we were going to be able to conclude the FTA in 2 years, which was
with Malaysia?
Slightly optimistic, with Malaysia, because these are very complex and tedious negotiations. So,
but are you foreseeing a successful regional to regional trade negotiation in the future?
I hope for it.
So definitely EU remains the biggest investors in ASEAN.
Yeah. One of the biggest.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we would want to know EU's view on Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN 2015 and of course some human rights topics.
ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Welcome back, this is Grace.
And together with us is, of course, His Excellency Luc Vandebon, again, the Ambassador of Head of Delegation for European Union. How are you?
You okay?
I hope you're still keeping on track.
I'm still here.
Very early in the morning. Yeah.
Earlier we talked a lot about the economic benefits between ASEAN and EU, and I'm curious to know about the social-cultural aspects, especially in terms of higher education and all. What are some of the benefits that EU has offered to ASEAN?
Okay, as I think mentioned before, we're more than just simply trade and investment, although that is a very important part and aspect of our relationship. To support a number of other projects and programs in the socio-cultural sphere, we started with an initiative called READY, which stands for the Regional EU-ASEAN Dialogue Initiative or Instrument. It's a process or a mechanism that allows us to finance and financially support projects and programs in a whole variety of areas, from science and technology cooperation to education to border management to environment, you name it, it's all there. We have a list of projects which I could enumerate here, but that would be very boring and it's early in the morning and people might still be tired. But I can provide you with the full details of everything that we provided and supported in that context.
Check it at the EU website.
You can definitely get to the links on our website. On that, education is very important. We have participated over the last years. I think this year is the first time that we will not be able to do that in something called the Higher Education Fairs, which is basically mostly done and possible because of the contributions of our member states, because the EU, the institutions I work for and that I represent, we don't have universities as such or schools, so they are in our member states. So this is very much a bilateral thing between Germany and Malaysia, France and Malaysia, and ASEAN, rather than EU. We provide assistance and we create possibilities and programs for citizens and students from Southeast Asian countries to benefit from scholarships and exchanges of scientists and whatever in the context of our joint programs.
Oh, that's great. Very great development. So, next year, Malaysia will be the chairman for the ASEAN 2015. A lot of people having a lot of speculation, either it's positive or negative about how it would turn out. But for the EU's point of view, what is your outlook in terms of Malaysia's chairmanship, as well as the future of ASEAN integration and the ASEAN economic community?
Well, I think next year is going to be a very important year for ASEAN, and therefore the chairmanship role will have a specific particular importance. We know that the agenda that was set out by the government of Malaysia for this chairmanship is very ambitious, and again we hope that it will all work out, and we want to provide as much as possible assistance. I think the two main aspects that I kind of remember or would put specific emphasis on in what I've heard from the government is the completion of the ASEAN Economic Community. And again, this is something that we hope will succeed. Because
but Malaysia still haven't fulfilled the scorecard in terms of trying to create this platform for the economic community.
Well, I think that there is still a lot of work to be done. A lot of work has been done already, and if the intentions of all the heads of state and heads of government are in line with what your prime minister want to accomplish, then there will be, when there is a will, there is a way, they always say.
So how they can learn from EU if they want to get it done on time?
The creation of the single market is something that wasn't done. Rome was not built in one day, and neither was the single market. And it is something that is still a work in progress. It needs a lot of time. It needs a lot of goodwill. It needs a lot of flexibility, and it needs a lot of principles of solidarity to make this work. Again, if you're backed up by institutions that can help you, map out what needs to be done, we think, but that's only we, that facilitates largely the job that needs to be done, because otherwise you have to rely on meetings and encounters of various ministers of economy or ministers of trade or whatever.
There's a lot of ministerial meeting in ASEAN meetings when it comes to decision making. But when it comes to EU, you mentioned just now the creation of institution. I give example of the Human Rights Charter. It's one of those very few positive progress coming from Southeast Asia, although it's still not a perfect one. Talking about human rights, we don't have a human rights mechanism or an institutionalized mechanism like the EU has. But if ASEAN is to learn from EU in terms of addressing or dealing with human rights issue, considering we actually have quite a bad track record on that, how would that be if you have a view on that?
Again, this is not stuff that happens overnight. You have to have a willingness of everybody individually as a country to dedicate time and effort to your democratization process and the importance you attach to human rights. And then you have to find a way to align that with the rest of the countries that make up ASEAN. We had to do, and we still are doing, exactly the same thing. Again, this is an area where we very often, human rights, receive a lot of suspicion because there they are again, talking about European human rights or so. We don't think that European human rights exists. We very strongly believe that human rights are universal, and cooperation, human rights, the protection, the promotion of human rights, building democratic states are all basic principles and form the cornerstone on which the European Union was built. Internally, still now, whenever we talk about enlargement, but also more and more in all aspects of our external relations, which means that just like with our economic cooperation, the intention we have is to assist countries who ask us or who show an interest in learning from our experiences. We offer them full access to what went right and what went wrong. I remember again when I was in my previous Southeast Asian country in the Philippines, I attended workshops where we were invited on the creation of an ASEAN Human Rights Commission. To be quite honest, I don't know in how far and how potent this Human Rights Commission, this ASEAN Human Rights Commission is now, but links exists between our human rights organizations in Europe and ASEAN through the socio-cultural programs that we have. So we
and
can
one of
only
your recent campaign is the anti-death penalty.
this is one of our main human rights campaigns every year
in Southeast Asia?
Southeast Asia, but basically worldwide is the abolition of the death penalty.
But you know the recent view by Joko Widodo that he's not going to abolish death penalty, and death penalty is one of the main
deterrents.
Sorry?
No.
Yeah, it's one of the it's one of the main how do I say penalties for those who are convicted for crimes, especially drug related.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we could have a couple of separate programs on this, because if you get me going on this, I'm categorically and principally opposed to the death penalty. I find that this principle of an eye for an eye, you know, as the saying goes, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. It doesn't help anything, and usually also even. Not only talking about drug crimes, but for heinous crimes and murders and all of that, you know, what you always go look at the prosecution is their premeditation, you know, what's the suffering, what's imposing the death penalty is the most typical case of a heinous crime. I mean, you let the guy who you're going to kill or the person know that you're going to kill him. You put him on death row without telling him when exactly it's going to happen. It's premeditated. You even pick your, the execution instruments. It's the typical example of what you want to go against. And we have whole scores of scientific studies and sociological studies in Europe that show that the death penalty is not a deterrent. And you know, you can still see the countries that still apply the death penalty are amongst the countries with the highest crime rate. So something is not clicking there.
So it should be more of an educational approach rather than just punishing them, or,
I think rehabilitation approach.
Rehabilitation, trying to tackle the root causes of why there is crime. You will always have aberrations in a system, social aberrations, but I don't think that as a government you have to keep on going for the higher ground, and if you stoop down to the same level, I think that it inspires more to the opposite than what you would like it to be a deterrent for.
Might need to tell that to Prime Minister Najib and also President Joko Widodo.
I think that Malaysia is still a retentionist country, but I know that there are studies being conducted by the Attorney General's chambers now, and we're very much interested to see what the outcome is going to be. So we've had good meetings. Our campaign here received a lot of publicity. We had a fantastic exhibition by Toshi Kazama, who I think was a guest on your program.
As a photographer.
Yeah, the Japanese activist. We had a social media campaign. We had meetings with government officials and members of parliament. So we keep on going for this. This is one of the aspects of our human rights presence in the world and in Southeast Asia. Another one that we find very important is the ratification of the Rome Statute for the International Criminal Court. In Malaysia, we also had a very interesting and actively participated in seminar on freedom of religion or belief, together with the German embassy, I guess, and with the support of the GMM, the General
Global Movement of Moderates.
Global Movement of the Moderates, as well as the services of Minister Kurup in the Prime Minister's Department, which was very interesting. And again, what we want to do, we're all about creating platforms where people from different opinions can come and exchange opinions. And if they come, if they attend, and if they discuss, even if in the end they agree to disagree, we already are happy, because we provided a platform where people. That's all what the EU is always about. People make fun of us sometimes. There they are again. They go to meetings. negotiate until they're blue in the face. They keel over, they go to sleep, and the next morning they happily continue. That's, we want to avoid confrontation. We're non-confrontationalists. And we think
one thing I have to credit for European Union is until now you don't have any wars since probably World War II.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
In fact, in addition to that, well, it just came in my mind, which was that there were a few visits in European countries from ASEAN Committee, for example, like ASEAN Committee on the Rights of Women and Children. They visited Brussels last year, as well as there were a few visits in Jakarta as well. So definitely the working relations between EU and ASEAN on the human rights is increasing on this level.
Yeah, it's very increasing. But okay, this is $1 million question.
Okay, it was very nice being here.
So, in conjunction with Human Rights Day, I think one of the key elements that I guess we are trying to promote in Duran ASEAN is the idea of freedom of expression, because freedom of expression is something that is quite lacking in a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. But at the same time, it is also probably the aspiration of people in ASEAN to have greater say in what ASEAN ought to be. So when it comes to in the Malaysian context of freedom of expression, I think the main focus has been for the global community has been on the Sedition Act. What's your view on that?
So we have come to this topic finally.
Well, yes, we are very much promoting freedom of expression as well, and we have actually been involved in various activities on freedom of expression in Malaysia through the instruments, the budgets that we have at our disposal, or that we used to have at our disposal for that, specifically the European Initiative for Democracy and Human Rights. On the Sedition Act, the Sedition Act is an act. An act is an act. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. I think for us, because we are very big proponents of freedom of expression, we have received a lot of criticism on our integration, on the way we handle immigration, on various aspects where people can sometimes be extremely vitriolic, sometimes halfway rightfully, sometimes very biased and unbalanced and lopsided, and sometimes plain wrong. We take it. Everybody's entitled their opinion. So I also have my opinion about the Sedition Act, but that's my personal opinion, and I don't think that plays a big role in the context of what is happening here. We definitely do not want to interfere in this country, but because for all the reasons we have talked about, ASEAN and Malaysia are a very important partner to us, and we want ASEAN to succeed, and we want Malaysia to be successful
And
as
one
a
of
partner
the
of us.
elements to be successful is to address the issue of freedom of expression, I suppose.
So, therefore, we are very much interested in what is going on in the country, and we follow closely everything that is going on, and people formulate their opinion. Me personally, I find that, like with all things, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The pudding here being the act, and the eating being the way in which it's going to be implemented.
So there you go. So overall, when it comes to EU-ASEAN relations, not just in terms of economy, but all the various aspects, social, cultural, politics, and all that. What do you foresee ASEAN post 2015? Do you foresee ASEAN being a nation, ASEAN being stronger, as in like strengthen its regional cooperation, and also perhaps becoming more institutionalized, just like the EU? Or do you see ASEAN being still confused of its regional position, especially being squeezed by bigger superpower like India, China, and of course the US?
Well, I think that a certain degree of confusion is good to be there, because it keeps people on their toes and you don't get too complacent. It's difficult to predict where ASEAN is going to be post 2015, because, as we mentioned before, 2015 is a very important year for ASEAN, and a lot will depend on what is going to happen to post 2015 and what can be accomplished during 2015. We really, really hope that the ASEAN Economic Community is going to take off. If that is the case, then obviously ASEAN is going to become even more important in terms of trade and investment. It's going to be a more important economic entity. If your Prime Minister's vision or view on having ASEAN people-centered is going to work out, you will have a much larger involvement, which is fundamentally important to make this work. This is also an aspect, visibility, perception, that we would gladly work together with you, because it's something that we blatantly fail in since we exist. I always say that we are our own worst public relations agents. Hardly anybody, I'm exaggerating a little bit, it's getting better, but if you look at the Euro barometers, they call that, these regular polls that are organized throughout Europe to see what the perception of European citizens is of the EU, it's not very much to be optimistically enthusiastic about. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and I know that you in ASEAN have a lot to do in that respect too, but it's vitally important that you create, establish, and then maintain this link, this direct link with your citizens to get them involved and find legitimacy of what you are trying to do. And if all of that works, if the people's-centered approach of ASEAN, the further creation of the ASEAN economic community persists, you automatically have a much more integrated region, which also will be gaining more and more in political clout. And that is also one of the reasons why we are very interested in ASEAN, why ASEAN for us is a priority, why we have decided to appoint a dedicated EU ambassador to ASEAN, who is going to sit beside our EU ambassador in Jakarta towards Indonesia. So we'll have a separate person to underline the importance we attach to that, because we think that ASEAN is very interesting from a political point of view, only when you look at the leverage it eventually can have on the other great blocs, the other great partners, the other great countries in the region, like China and Japan.
And EU.
Well, yeah.
to some extent. Yeah.
But this is something that, we're already a member, basically an observer, I guess, in ARF, the ASEAN Regional Forum. We would like to offer our services, be more integrated in the regional security architecture in Southeast Asia, in Asia. And therefore, we were very happy that at the last leaders meeting, ASEAN-EU leaders meeting, the ministerial we had in July this year, it was jointly decided to try to uplift our existing relationship to an EU-ASEAN strategic partnership, which again would kind of reflect the fact that we are more than an economic and trade and investment partner, that there is also a big political and security dimension to our cooperation, and we hope that this can be solidified by us getting more integrated, getting access, getting into the East Asia Summit.
So with that, at the end, we are now at the end of the show. Anyway, thank you, Luc Vandebon, for sharing your view.
Very welcome. Thank you very much.